Hello.
Hi there.
My name is Tuomas Manninen, this is Ulla Jones, and we work for OP, or she does for Day for
One more day.
Yes, so sad to see her going, but of course happy for her. So we're gonna go through the present exact same presentation that we did in Dublin in 4 weeks ago. So we come from Design and Customer Experience Unit, and I'm head of Design and Customer Experience.
And I'm currently the design culture lead at OP. And as said, it's one of those roles that you encounter more when the company and the design culture reaches the strategic level, which we'll talk more about a little bit later.
So we, as you may know, we are a cooperative financial company. We have retail banking, non-life insurance, and also wealth management. We work for B2C and B2B. We have approximately a bit over 50 in-house designers. I think 51 is tomorrow 50. So internal designers, and then we have 30 consultants working for full-time for OP. So roughly our team is 80 people. We have business designers, strategic service designers, UX designers, copywriters, art directors, and so forth. So that's our team, and we work as a competence center at our R&D, so serving all our business units.
So we named our presentation "The Uncharted Territory of Strategic Design," and I wanted to just because there's been some reference to me leaving tomorrow, and I sort of wanted to use this example as while at OP we've reached the strategic level of design. What that also means is that while we've achieved a lot internally, we've also made a huge impact in the Finnish design scene. And I would say that I can credit my current future employer for just following the OP story and wanting not to do the same, but wanting to also apply service design into their strategic work. And so really this is a story of, like, I just want to tickle your imagination throughout our presentation that while we're sharing OP's story, it is the story that anyone in Finland can and will benefit from. But about the name, so Uncharted Territory is that we do consider that it is taking design into the strategic place is something that there really isn't guidebooks and much of an experience and cases to learn from. So it is an uncharted territory. Paths need to be created by going ahead. So hence the topic. Yeah, and so in the presentation, we're going to be talking about 3 different things. We're going to talk about how we got there, the journey. We're also going to introduce the model, the design maturity model that we use to measure and monitor our journey. And then we will also stop for a little while at the strategic level, sharing you what it feels and of what happens and how do you know that you've reached the design on a strategic level.
So what we've been using is this Danish Design Center's design ladder model to measure the maturity of design in our company. So you're familiar with this model. It's from 2003, so fairly old model, and as all the maturity models, they kind of it's built in that you should aim for the highest maturity, and in this model it will be the step number 4, design as a strategy. So why? So all of these researches and articles and studies are telling us that the design intensive companies are doing better business. We have those Fortune 500 companies which been analyzed, that those that have been raised the fastest on that list are the design intensive organizations. Or we have a share value analysis that design intensive organizations are the ones that the share value increases faster than non-design intensive. Or we have this new article, a study from McKinsey in 2 weeks ago, which is also telling the same story. So that's why that's kind of a built-in into this model. That's why you should aim for the step 4.
And it's important to remember when looking at this model is that the company will not move as a monolith, that everyone, it will be on the step 3 at the same time. There will be some niches of the company that are still sort of trying to figure out design as a form giving. But what we are trying to say is that when a certain factors are visible, certain things happen, you can say that the company is overall on the level of a strategic design. So, moving on to we're going to go through the steps one by one. We won't dwell too long on the lower steps, and so we're going to sort of focus on the step 4. But how we're sort of separated them all, so you can follow the presentation with the same structure, is that we're always going to be talking a little bit about design doing. Then we're going to be talking about design people, and then design culture. And the step number 1, non-design, of course, already back then, development was happening. It was just not done by designers. And Tuomas is going to show a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was a day, that was a year before 2011, where the design didn't really play any role on the development at OP. So obviously we were launching new services like this one, for second online bank in Europe, 4th in the whole world.
Year was 1996.
Yeah, correct. So we were launching new innovative product, but design didn't play any role on that. So the innovation was done within the expert team, and some of them were good, some of them were not so good. But anyhow, design didn't play any role, even though the innovation itself was a hot topic there. So that is something that obviously company was on the kind of moving forward without design as well. But then on the moving on the step 2, and we could say that this is the year 2011, and that's the year where the company established a development center in Oulu. So first UX designers and service designers were hired in the company in the Oulu Development Center. And it was a strategic decision to form that in Oulu, which is 600 kilometers away from here. We actually have nowadays still that, and it's growing, that development center. We have there approximately 400 people working at the moment. So there was a lot of channel development. So for example, OP Mobile, OP.fi and Pivo, the mobile wallet, was done there. But that was the time, 2011, when we would say that we actually moved to step number 2.
Yeah, and while it's not a small thing to emphasize the fact that the development center was founded in Oulu. It's 600 kilometers from Helsinki, which means that they were able to develop their own separate culture that was not so dependent on the decision making and the culture of the headquarters. There was more agility and just more freedom to develop an innovation culture. It's also around in Helsinki, then again, where the headquarters were. Design was also happening. Service design was applied. It was we were mostly using consultants. I myself was a service design consultant at the time for OP, and it was really based on the fact that some of the managers who were tasked to innovate or create something new felt that human-centered design was necessary to move forward. Next slide, yeah. And so, and another thing to point out was, and what's worth mentioning, is that during those days, I mean, the design that was done at the highest degree with a lot of ambition, and it won in Finland the Vuoden Huiput Design Awards, and globally, internationally, the Red Dot Awards. That was the OP Mobile in 2014.
Then before we entered step 3, we actually realized that we had a good competence and kind of good resources on the end of the development process on design-wise. So we had good designers at the end of the design process, but we realized that actually all the big concepts, business concepts, service concepts, whatever, we went to companies like Gofor and asked that, hey, here's X thousand euros, can you create as a concept? And then external consultants will come with the next excellent concept, and we're happy, and then we start scratching our head at, okay, how do we implement that with our internal designers? So we realized that actually if we want to have a full understanding of the kind of the design value in the company, we need to also have enough resources at the very early of the development process. So 2015 we hired first business designers in the company, for example. So those are the ones who actually started being involved internally in the early stages of the development processes.
Wasn't it so that you even created a business case showing in euros how much it would be to do all the strategic work internally?
Yeah, there were actually a couple of drivers that we were able to kind of sell the idea of having more design resources in the company. That was the one thing, obviously saying that, okay, we have a kind of a we could save a few euros by doing certain things in-house. But more importantly, we were able to create a kind of a sense of urgency to the top management that obviously, as we know, financial sector is going through a major disruption. Customer behavior is changing dramatically. We need to digitize our current processes, and also we need to create new digital business models. So all of those four things, we said that with the help of designers, we are more able to tackle those challenges, and that was kind of a sense of urgency that we were able to create to the top management, and that's how we got permission to hire, for example, 9 business designers and strategic service designers. So those are the kind of the steps that we were able to sell that in-house internally, and one thing which is also has been very important for us is the metrics, so the design value metrics. So depending on which stage you are or which step you are, you need to of course apply different types of metrics. Here we started calculate what we call a service design percentage, which was a percentage of projects utilizing design methodology from ideation to launch. 2015 January, when we started calculating that was 10%. So 1 out of 10 projects were utilizing design methodology and customer-centric methodology on the development process from ideation to launch. Normally you get what you measure, so end of 2015 it was 39%. Then we get those critical resources in-house early 2016, and at the end of 2016 it was already 78% of our projects were utilizing design from ideation to launch. 2016 also we got that metric to our top management scorecard. So obviously, once again, you get what you measure. So we got the critical resources, we got the metrics in place on the top management scorecard. So those were the things in 2016 which we were able to say that, okay, now we've entered to the step 3 because 4 out of 5 projects are utilizing design, and those 1 out of 5 is more normally like these major IT renewal projects which actually design doesn't give any value. So in that sense we could say that we were able to step on the step 3.
And interestingly enough, as Tuomas was mentioning, the design maturity model indicated that we are strongly on a step 3, where design as a process, we are in the development processes, and around the same time we felt that what we did was all projects were good projects. Whatever landed on our table, we would take and do it. We would basically negotiate with the internal customer that, okay, so you want this is what we could provide. Okay, so you want us to prettify your PowerPoint presentations. That's not quite what we do, but let us share how we could help. But we still wouldn't say no to any project. And that's definitely sort of just to point out that there is some sort of disconnect with the model where we were sort of advancing nicely, but internally as designers we felt that we weren't using our full capacity and we weren't giving as much impact as we possibly could, which led us to think that we should focus more on quality instead of quantity.
So as Ulla mentioned earlier, we're gonna spend a bit more time on this step than the previous one. So first is kind of the design doing part of it. So we started as our business designers, for example, started. They were focusing on the portfolio management, on the R&D function, and quite quickly we found out that actually the decisions are made in OP context, not in everywhere, but in OP context, the big decisions are made before the actual portfolio management. So we changed the focus of business design from R&D management to our business management. So that was kind of a first iteration of our business design role. Currently, as we are reorganizing our company at the moment, we are going on the fourth iteration of the business design role. So that's probably some insight from our journey, is that we need to kind of iterate the roles as well as we go, as we learn. And that has been also, obviously, from my perspective, really good that the team has been able to kind of rethink their own roles and really open for changing that. Not like I'm business designer and this is what says on my job description, to actually rethink that, okay, how do we make more value out of design if my role would be this and that or that. So that's one thing. Also metrics we needed to change, as said, that the service design percentage is a volume metric, right? So as Ulla mentioned, there's no point of measuring volume if not all projects are good projects. So we need to kind of make selection of the ones that we make the biggest impact. Also, we found out that when you enter to this fourth step, where design as a strategy means that the rest of the design is not only for designers, but actually the rest of the organization is also utilizing design thinking on their everyday life. It's really hard to isolate design from the rest of the project. So we started measuring more like things like, how is our innovation culture changing in OP? Does our internal people feel that design methodology brings something new? How much we innovate more than we did previously, and things like that. So those are the ones that we kind of changed the metrics, what we do today, what we used to do on the step 3, sorry. And then new roles like Ulla's design culture lead is one example, or we have a design PMO actually making kind of pre-selecting the project that we are doing, and also having that kind of stakeholder management in advance, so that our designers can focus more on the actual design work.
And also content designers, some of you might know them as copywriters and so forth. So it's the full scale of a spectrum. And while we're moving to design is not only for designers, it's sort of a great sort of a bridge to that we also started offering different sort of a training programs for our top management, sort of a customer safaris where they would enter the wild urban city life with the customers and observe how customers make their decisions and so forth. And we got really good feedback from those internal trainings. But the few things that I wanted to mention here is that business design seems to be one of those roles that a lot of agencies already have and a lot of the companies already have. But back in 2015, when we started hiring business designers, it wasn't one of the most common roles. And we got some criticism over why would we separate business design from service design. And again, sort of emphasizing the fact that that was an internal decision that we needed to make for our sort of the way OP has been organized. We needed someone to focus on the very first part of idea creation, so that the concepts that were going forward were were relevant for the customers in the previous stages, they weren't. So again, this might not work for everyone, but that was how we saw it. And what we've been working on very hard is that business design and service design, there's no hierarchy level that one is higher than the other. They're just different kind of tasks and jobs that people do. So it's not some sort of a career progression that you start as a service designer and you work your way to business designer. Not at all. They're different skill sets altogether, and people have different interests.
And to add to that, I calculated just a few weeks ago, we have actually 7 different titles currently for designers, which starts to turn against us because we are seen as kind of a resource pool, so that the business comes to us that, hey, we want one service designer, one UX designer, we need copywriter, and that's not the point. We obviously want to talk about the content, not the kind of the roles and resources. And we are actually going through a discussion that we should actually kind of put our titles under one designer title, then designer, content designer, service designer, or something like that. So probably we change that in the future.
In which case the design PMO would be in a very strong role, because they would be the one sort of sourcing the right kind of a designer to a particular case. So design is not only for designers, also means that all our designers were tasked to integrate design thinking into larger organization, to all their stakeholders and so forth. And that leads to...
Yeah, just one more adding to that is that when we hire designers, and some of them come from the agency side, and that's something that we've been discussing a lot, that when you are an in-house designer, that you always have that transformation role on as a designer. So you are not only doing design on the project, but you are also transforming the rest of the project group to start thinking as a designer. And as from an agency side, in many times you have a kind of a project and you do design to that project, and then you don't have that kind of so strong transformation role as you might as an internal designer.
Yeah, and so at the level where on a step 4, where design is a strategy, it's also about thought leadership. All the designers cannot only do projects; they also take on the role of an ambassador. And this is something, as Tuomas was mentioning, there's something about it that when you come to be an in-house designer, and basically world is your oyster and there's all these great projects that you can tackle, we need to be really mindful about basically the stamina and the well-being of our designers, because they're also passionate and interested in taking on different kinds of projects, and there would be so much to fix. But one of the challenges that we have as a company is not the high, but that we have a challenge to keep our designers well and healthy and not burn out. And one of the things of thought leadership and culture building is that you also educate your internal clients to be mindful and understand what design can do and what it can't do, and so forth. And this is a picture from one of our design days. What we've been running over the years 6 times already is these internal design days, where it's a full day of a conference sort of event of talks, workshops, where we're trying to show different methods that people could use in their everyday work. Of course, that's one way of doing it. We've now noticed that, again, we've reached the sort of end of those sort of design days, and now we're looking at running very sort of a topic-specific design days, such as for legal design, HR, and so forth. So again, nothing is static, and you can't just apply one model. You need to be mindful that things change. When it's about thought leadership, it's also about taking care of the fundamentals, like design DNA, for example. A company at this level needs to have a very sort of solid foundations of principles that we all know and we work under. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but we're also working on keeping our designers motivated, and we're working on a charity case project at the moment in in the beginning of December, 30 of our designers are donating 1 day of their time doing this sort of a design relay of two-week sprint with, and we're currently applying, finding a right partner to work with. So we're looking at different ways to keep our designers motivated and educate the internal stakeholders.
So putting this whole story in a kind of a timeline, and you could start it. We'll start it from where we started. So 1996 with the first, the second online bank in Europe. This could start from 100 years earlier. However, 2011 we could say that we entered to step 2 when we hired first service designers, UX designers on our Oulu development center. 2015 we hired first business designers, strategic service designers, and we were able to be part of the kind of R&D process from 10% to 78%. And then 2017 we kind of could say that we are already part of the business decision making. However, as Ulla said in the beginning, when I emphasized that the company is not moving as a monolith. So we have designers, individual designers, individual projects which are still in a step 2, just giving form to some stupid idea which has been decided to do. So it's not saying that every single project that we do are like happy joy step number 4. However, as kind of as an average, as a kind of what we see and in a whole, we could say that we have been entered, taking first steps on the step 4.
Another way of seeing the progress is through our design days. They're all online. If you type OP on YouTube, you will find them all, and they're subtitled in English as well. But the topic started from what is service design, why to invest in service design, design and data. Then it was design as a mindset. Then it was a design and machine. And the latest one in last spring was anything can be designed. So again, you can hear how you need to start from the basics and move from there when you build the understanding. And so sort of a few takeaways from the step 4 that we felt was necessary to bring together. First of all, the step 4 is not a solid platform that you stand on and you feel that, yes, you've arrived. We found that when we sort of have our toe on the step 4, it's a winding path, a lot of little sort of sub-steps and so forth. But the things to sort of notice and understand is that metrics become from external metrics, they become internal cultural metrics. What works for your company, what works for your context. Designer becomes a coach. Designer, of course, has their tasks as part of a team, but they're also coaching others to think a certain way. Design brings business value. It's no longer just part of a process, but it actually can be, its value can be measured in other terms. Design is only done collaboratively, which is super important. Where, as Tuomas said, we get a request of can designer come here? Yes, we can always send a designer, but designer themselves will not solve all problems. And at this level, most teams understand that they just want designer to facilitate conversation, to bring up those ideas, and so forth. So, at this, the step 4. Hunt for unicorns ends, which is meant to say that you don't just send one designer to solve all problems, and that designer spends 4 weeks there, and then if they don't achieve anything what is expected by the project team, they're sent back, burned out, and completely and design is deemed useless. At this level, design's value is already understood.
As this model is set fairly out from 2003, we feel that there's a kind of there should be evolved and also developed further. Our suggestion is for step 5, design as culture. We feel that it's time for this model also for all of us to also looking for the next step, and this is our suggestion. We've been actually having a couple of discussions in Aalto University and in the Design Factory, and this might be something cooking up together with them, but let's see. However, we feel that a lot of the design discussion is around the methodology, especially on the service design. If looking at the kind of the not
canvases.
Yes,
and
and not saying kind of any critics, but looking at the SD and global conferences, for example, there's a lot of workshops around different methods. We feel that as a service designers, we should be kind of also not stuck on the methods, which are really important, but also talk about the business value or the strategical design, and also design as a culture. We feel that we should celebrate the craftsmanship and design ethos more. Talk about, for example, we feel that we have a responsibility as we are investing quite heavily in design. As OP, we have over 50 designers in-house, and then we are investing also kind of from buying design from different agencies and companies. We feel that we should talk about more on the design ethos. So, for example, the Nordic design ethos, meaning functionality and simplicity. So, how do we bring that to our services? So, what I'm trying to say is not only talk about the methods, but also is this service, celebrating, for example, Nordic design ethos or something else? We should talk about the design ethos more than the methodology. I also feel that the kind of not talk about the human-centric, but actually life-centric design, which is a kind of broader perspective on design. We are doing a charity project of trying to kind of solve some challenge or problem that we have in the Finnish society in 2 weeks. Let's see how we can manage that. But however, that's kind of also a bit for us. It's a larger thing than human-centric design at OP, and that's why we feel that we should talk about life-centric design.
Yeah, and since there's a post-conference thing in Dublin, there was a talk. One of the keynotes was about circular economy, and also that sort of what's the relationship of design and responsibility, for example.
And then last but not least, the inquiry as a general approach. What schools are utilizing design thinking on their kind of way. Our children have how teachers are doing their teaching in the schools. So as an example, it's a larger thing than what only kind of R&D can utilize. So that's why design as a culture, we feel that could be a step number 5 on this model.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.